Hello, my name is David Hedge, and this video is one that I went back and forth on if I wanted to do. But I wanted to say some things I want to get out there. And this week has been probably one of the hardest things I've had to go through. On December 3rd at 6:32 p.m., I lost my dad, David Ralph Hedge Sr., to cancer. He was 78 years old. And this hit everybody out of nowhere. Because Monday last week, my wife and I were getting our plans together to go to New York to meet up with some friends of ours that she's met over online through different writing groups. And my dad was getting ready to go into the hospital to do his first treatment of a brand new drug that was going to help out his cancer. And he was very hopeful. My mom was hopeful that this was going to work. Tuesday, come to find out that the cancer had gotten bad. And later on, we found out that he had 6 months to a year. And I went up there on Tuesday to see him, and then Wednesday we went up there to see him again before we went out of town. And Tuesday he was out of it, but Wednesday he was more responsive. He was up and he was joking around. He was ready to fight a nurse. And he was in good spirits. And then Thursday I called him after we got to Newark, New Jersey, stayed at our apartment, which was not the best thing in the world. It had a lot of stuff wrong with it, unfortunately. But I told my dad about it. He just started laughing so hard about everything because we talked it up going, yeah, it's a great place, Dad. It's a great place, Mom, we're staying at. And I told him and I showed him pictures and everything. And my dad just got the biggest laugh out of that. And he looked towards my mom after he got off the phone with me. And she told me later. And he was like, I think my son and daughter got screwed. And apparently that's when everything started going downhill shortly after. Friday and Saturday, he got to the point to where my mom called me Saturday night, and I was in Times Square, and she told me that I needed to come back home if I could early, because Dad has 24 to 72 hours left. And so Cindy stayed in New York with the amazing, wonderful people that we just met, and I went home. At 4:37 a.m., I hitched the train, went to Roanoke at the Amtrak station at 1 o'clock, got in the car, and drove an hour and a half to Lynchburg. And I was able to be by my dad's side. During that time, on that day, my sisters and my mom all told him that we love him and that we know that he's tired. And it's okay to rest because we'll take care of each other. Later that day, Cindy, I was in talks with her. I was texting her and everything, and she went, hey, can you give Papa David a hug for me? And I went, I could definitely do that, my dear. And I gave her a hug. Gave her a hug to Dad. And I said, Dad, this is from Cindy. And this is from us. And I talked to my dad a little bit. I was like, Dad, I love you. And I hope that I'm half the man, half the father, half the husband that you are. And I hope I'm as tough as you are. And I want to let you know that we'll be okay. And I know you're tired. And I understand if you need to rest. I love you, Dad. And shortly thereafter, he left us. They always said that the last thing that goes before somebody passes away from this world is their hearing. That they're able to still hear everything, even though they can't respond, even though they can't speak, even though they can't do anything else, they can still hear what's going on. And that happened. My dad basically held on till I got home, and he held on until I gave him the okay that he can rest now. That we knew he was tired. After fighting cancer for 15 years, even the strongest person needs to rest. And that's what he's doing right now. I had to call Cindy that night shortly after and let her know. And she had such tremendous people and tremendous love with the people that she had just recently met in person up in Newark. And they stayed with her, and they cared for her, and they comforted her when she needed it the most. I was there for my mom, and I was there for my sisters. And we were both in the places that we needed to be at that time. And I'm very thankful for that. My dad was laid to rest on Wednesday, on the 6th. And today is the 8th. And it's still... there's still a part of me that wants to think I'm going to wake up and this has all just been a dream. But in reality, I know that I will no longer be able to call my dad. That I will no longer be able to hear him laugh. That I no longer be able to see him anymore. But I know he's around. And he will go on through me and through my sisters. Because he gave each of us a little part of himself when we were growing up. For my sister, my little sister Ash, she has strength. And she's stubborn. She's stubborn like my dad. She's stubborn like my grandmother. And anything that her family has been through, any tough times they go through, she's always been that rock in that family to help them through. And anytime she goes through something now, he's going to stand right next to her. For my older sister, she got his care and compassion. She went into being a nurse for the longest time, and she healed people. She healed the sick. She helped people get better physically and mentally. She was always there for somebody to talk to if they needed it. And she does that to this very day. Even though she's no longer an active nurse, she still has those tendencies. And I know that anytime she tries to help someone or anytime she's there to heal someone, my dad's going to be holding her hand. And as for me, I got my dad's humor and his people skills, I guess. Because I've always loved talking to people. I always loved making them smile. Because a whole lot better to make somebody smile than make them frown. And my dad always had that philosophy. And that's the reason why he loved doing what he did for the longest time. As a bus driver, he got to meet amazing people. And he got to meet so many different people from different backgrounds. They always loved talking to them. And all three of us kids are going to need all this and more to help my mom get through the next few days and next few weeks and next few months and next few years. Because she lost her husband of 47 years, her friend, her lover. And we're going to be there for her, and we're going to be there for each other, just like we told Dad we would be. And before I end this video, I want to say a few things about my dad, because the preacher that we had on Wednesday was not the most charismatic person ever. He didn't know my dad. He was from the church that my aunt goes to. My parents used to go to that church, but they haven't been since my dad was sick. And I want to say a few things about my dad, because he was reading notes and he didn't know my dad. And I heard my dad's voice in the back of my head going, could they get anybody else drier and not know me to do this service? Because there was 2 times I laughed during the funeral, and I did not mean to, but just I had dad's voice in my head. And that was one of the times. The other time was my sister picked out Nights in White Satin for one of the songs in the funeral. And it's a pretty decently long song. And when they were playing it, I just had my dad's voice in my head going like, she had to pick this song. I told her I liked it, but why did she have to pick it for this? At least she didn't pick Freebird. And I just started giggling, and Cindy looked at me and she was like, he's officially broke. He's lost it. But then I explained to her what happened, and she understood, because that was Dad. That was his sense of humor. He would always try to make the best of a situation. He would always try to turn a frown upside down. And that's what he did that day. I just had his voice pop in my head. But my dad was my hero. He was my first hero. He served in the Navy. He worked with Grumman on fire engines for 22 years. He was an Abbott bus driver for 20 years. And the cool thing about those jobs is that he was able to be around family. In Grumman, he worked with my grandfather, my dad's mom, for a good number of years. And then on the Abbott tours, he got to take my mom and me and my sister, and we were able to go on these trips with my dad. And being able to just go with them, whether it be to Niagara Falls, where my mom would go several times. I would always go on the fall foliage tours for New England, and I would be the bag boy and everything. And then my little sister would always be the mascot for the Virginia Tech women's basketball team. And we all got to take part in those trips, and we all got to be around Dad, and we got to meet some great people along the way. And when he was first diagnosed with multiple myeloma and his system went septic, a lot of people thought years ago that he would not be here today, that he was not going to be there for longer than an hour, and people were writing him off. And most of us thought that way. My wife Cindy didn't. My wife Cindy, even though she just recently met my dad, she was like, you know what, I've only known your dad for a short amount of time, but I know he's tough as hell, and he's a fighter. And she was right. He made it through, and he fought so long. He was able to get cancer into remission. And then, unfortunately, earlier this year, it came back full force. And in July, he went back in the hospital, and we were expecting the worst then, and he came back out. He wasn't done yet. But even the toughest person at some point has to rest. And that's what he's doing now. And I hope that he knows how much we love him, how much we're going to miss him, and we're going to do everything we can to share the love and compassion and care and strength and humor and just everything that he gave us kids. We're going to put it into the world, because he dang sure made this place a whole lot better, and he left it better than he found it. And hopefully all of us can do the same thing. So to anyone who watches this video, tonight, give your loved ones an extra big hug. Tell them that you love them. If you're having a stupid fight because of something small and trivial with a friend or a family member, just tell them, hey, I'm sorry. Let's work it out. Don't hold any grudges. Just be there for each other and care for each other. And that's what my dad would say. The preacher tried to send the end of that funeral service. He tried to go, you know what? If David was here, he would say that you should find a spiritual home. As much as my dad believed, that wouldn't have been what he said. My dad would have said, first of all, no more tears. I'm not here, yet I'm always going to be here. I'm going to be right beside you. I'll be with you. The one thing that he would want us to do is move forward and live life the best that we can and be there for everyone. And if we see somebody hurting, help them. If we see somebody with a frown, try to give them a smile. Help bring people up instead of tear them down. And be there for one another and to take care of each other. That's what he would have said. And that's what we're going to try and do. So to my dad, I'm going to miss you. And I love you with all my heart and soul, Pop. And I hope I can be as good a man as you were. I love you, Dad.